Imagine a picture-perfect married life, a luxurious home, dreams turned into reality, and a husband willing to do anything for love. But what if, behind this flawless facade, lies an entirely different story? In recent weeks, Karen began noticing strange details. His wife's phone constantly lighting up at night, hidden bills for items she never wore, and meetings she only mentioned in passing. But the strangest things were the marks that couldn't be explained and a scent that didn't belong to her. Could he be mistaken? Or are these suspicions just the beginning of a truth he's not ready to face? My wife cheated on me after winning the lottery, but she had no idea how it would end. Karen and Lauren were a typical American family. They lived in a small town where everyone knew each other. Their house, though not new, was cozy, and Nancy, their mischievous husky, filled the home with laughter and joy. Karen worked at an auto repair shop, and Lauren at a local coffee shop. Their income was modest, but they always managed their money wisely, ensuring they had enough for all their needs. Every Friday, Karen and Lauren would go grocery shopping together. It was their tradition. They would buy groceries for the week and always set aside a little money for a lottery ticket. Karen always dreamed of winning, but treated it humorously. "One day, Lauren, we'll buy this ticket, and I'll finally quit this damn job at the shop," he joked as he clicked on the terminal. "Well, if we win, Karen," she replied with a wink. Life went on as usual. They were happy together, even if it wasn't always easy. Karen often came home tired and covered in grease, while Lauren occasionally complained about rude customers at the coffee shop. But they shared a sense of humor and a love for Nancy. One day, after a hard day's work, Karen forgot to buy a lottery ticket. Lauren decided to try her luck and went to the store herself. "Well, Karen, this time I bought the ticket. Maybe my luck works better than yours," she said, handing him the slip. "Ha, if we win, it's all thanks to you," he replied with a smile. A few days later, they were watching the evening news when Karen heard a familiar number. He leaned in, holding the lottery ticket, and started checking the numbers. The first matches, the second, the third. "Lauren, do you see this?" he yelled when all 6 numbers matched. Lauren jumped out of her seat, looked at the screen, and realized they had just become rich. "We won, Karen. $5 million. Nancy, sensing their joy, started jumping around, barking and wagging her tail. "This is incredible," Karen repeated, unable to believe his eyes. The next few days were a whirlwind. They visited the lottery office, claimed their prize, and began making big plans for the future. But, as often happens, money can bring happiness, but it can also destroy what once was. Karen began noticing changes in Lauren. She started paying more attention to herself, buying expensive things, and often leaving the house under the pretense of meeting friends. The money was on a special card Karen controlled, but he gave Lauren access so she could buy whatever she wanted. Lauren also quit her job, saying she might start something of her own. "You look good, Lauren," he said one day, seeing her in a new dress. "But do we really need this? It looks a bit flashy. I don't recognize you in it." "Karen, we can afford it now. Why save? Besides, I like my new style. I feel more confident." This was just the beginning. Karen didn't know that the win wasn't a gift but a test that would change everything in their lives. Karen enjoyed the newfound freedom that the lottery win brought. He decided to quit his job to spend more time at home with Lauren and Nancy. But strangely, the more he stayed home, the more often he noticed Lauren disappearing. "Lauren, you're going to your friends again?" Karen asked when he saw her at the door with a small designer bag in hand. "Yes, we're planning a little shopping trip. Do you want me to bring you something?" she replied, quickly putting on her sunglasses. "No, thanks. Just don't be too late. Nancy gets restless when you're gone too long." Lauren just nodded and left, leaving Karen sitting on the couch with Nancy, who nervously licked her paws. He couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. They used to spend evenings together, watching TV shows or playing with Nancy. Now, Lauren was often away, and her phone was always on silent. One day, Karen decided to surprise her and prepare dinner. He pulled out her favorite wine, marinated steaks, and even ordered dessert from a local bakery. But when the clock struck 8, Lauren was still not home. "Where are you, Lauren?" Karen quietly said, staring at his phone, which displayed her last message, "I'll be a little late." Nancy sat next to him, whining nervously. Karen patted her ears. "Looks like it's just you and me for dinner, girl." Lauren came home closer to midnight. Her hair was messy, and her cheeks had a faint blush. "Sorry I'm so late. We just couldn't stop. There were so many interesting things in the stores," she said, taking off her shoes. "You didn't even buy anything," Karen remarked, noticing that she didn't have a single shopping bag in hand. Lauren smiled sheepishly. "Well, just having a nice time is important, too." Karen didn't say anything else, but that night, he found it hard to sleep. Something felt off. A few days later, while tidying up the garage, Karen accidentally stumbled upon a package hidden behind some old boxes. It was a box of expensive shoes and a receipt for an even more expensive coat. The receipt didn't have a name on it, but Karen knew that Lauren never wore things like that. Later, he noticed her phone constantly lighting up with messages. She would quickly hide it whenever he entered the room. One time, Karen pretended to leave, then suddenly returned. He saw Lauren hastily closing a messaging app, looking guilty. "Who was that?" he asked calmly. "Oh, it's just Susan. She's venting about her problems with her husband again. Don't worry about it." Karen simply nodded, but his unease grew. He decided to act carefully so as not to raise suspicion. One evening, he went for a walk with Nancy but left his phone recording a voice memo. When he returned home, he found Lauren on a phone call. She quickly ended it when she saw him. Listening to the recording, Karen heard her talking to someone named Jason. Her voice was warm, quite unlike her usual tone when speaking to her friends. "I miss you." "Yeah, I know, but it's complicated. Karen gives me access to his card, but I need to be cautious." Karen's heart sank, but he decided not to jump to conclusions. He wanted to be certain before taking any action. Karen felt that life had finally turned around. After winning $5 million in the lottery, he felt like a new man. Despite the large sum of money now at his disposal, he hadn't changed drastically. He hadn't even celebrated the win as one might expect. No big party, no extravagant spending. Instead, he decided to do something meaningful for Lauren, his wife. He knew she had always dreamed of a BMW convertible, and he thought it would be the perfect gift. This wasn't just a car. It was a symbol of how he could now secure their future. Karen went to the dealership. When he walked in, the salesperson looked at him skeptically, as if doubting that this was someone who could afford such a high-end vehicle. He, of course, didn't deny that he had won the lottery, but Karen wasn't one to share his wealth story with strangers. He simply said he was looking for a new car for his wife, and quickly finalized the purchase. The next day, after the car was delivered to their home, Karen planned a surprise for Lauren. In the morning, he told her he wasn't letting her go anywhere that day because he had something special planned for her. Lauren was surprised but didn't suspect anything. She had been waiting for him to give her something extravagant. After all, that was what she wanted. But she hadn't expected it to happen so soon. A few hours later, they stepped outside together, and Karen handed her the keys to the new car. Lauren couldn't believe her eyes at first. When she saw the car, she hugged Karen excitedly, kissed him, and her emotions seemed to overflow. But despite all her enthusiastic words, Karen noticed that she seemed tense. This wasn't what he had expected. Her joy felt somewhat forced, though she sincerely thanked him for such a lavish and luxurious gift. "This is incredible, Karen," she said, but her tone was not as emotional as usual. They hugged again, and everything seemed fine, but Karen felt that something had changed between them. Lauren seemed nervous, as though she couldn't focus on what was happening. He decided not to jump to conclusions. "I won't let you go anywhere today," he said, trying to keep his voice calm. "Let's just spend the day together. We'll go for a walk. I want to spend this day with you, just like before, just us and our dog Nancy." Lauren hesitated for a moment and then replied, "Sure, but I still want to invite my friends. They have to see your gift and celebrate it. Maybe we'll even invite more friends. I really want to share this joy with them." Karen felt a small pang inside. He didn't like that. They should have been enjoying this moment together, not sharing it with others. "Maybe we could do that a bit later," he said, still hoping she would change her mind. "I really just want to spend time with you." Lauren smiled, but the smile was brief and less genuine than usual. "I promise we'll still spend time together, but not right now. You understand. I just want to share this joy with them. Karen didn't insist further. He understood that Lauren probably wanted to show off in front of her friends and spend time with those who understood her. But it worried him. Why didn't she want to stay with him? Why didn't she want to spend this time together, like before? These questions kept troubling him, and he decided to think more about everything that was happening between them. Lauren spent the entire day preparing for the guests' arrival. She didn't want to cook anything at home, so she ordered food and drinks from expensive restaurants. She spent a lot of money, as she wanted to impress her guests. Karen couldn't help but notice that she was acting differently. She had always cooked herself before, but now she seemed more interested in external things rather than family responsibilities. Karen tried not to pay attention to it, but deep down, it bothered him. When Lauren began dressing up, he saw her in a short dress with a deep neckline. She paired her look with black stockings and a belt that seemed blatantly provocative. This wasn't her style, and Karen was surprised. "Lauren, maybe you didn't need to spend so much money," he asked, trying to stay calm. "And your outfit, well, it looks a bit odd." Lauren smiled without lifting her eyes from the mirror as she applied red lipstick. "Do you like it?" she asked, still not paying attention to his concerned look. "Yes, but why are you dressing up like this?" he replied. "It looks vulgar, especially since it's just the girls coming over." Lauren glanced at him quickly, continuing her makeup, and replied, almost brushing off his question, "No, it's not just the girls. There will be men, too. I want to introduce you to someone." Karen fell silent. He felt uncomfortable. Lauren seemed to have lost all restraint in spending and even in her behavior. She was with him, yet her preferences and habits were changing. "And also, can you take Nancy to someone for a while?" Lauren continued without looking at him. "We don't want the dog scaring the guests, and you probably wouldn't enjoy all the noise, right?" Karen felt like an outsider in their life. This wasn't what he was used to, and all of it weighed on him. Trying not to show his emotions, he gave in and agreed. "Fine, I'll take Nancy to the neighbors for some money, but let's make it quick," he said, though his anxiety kept building. A few minutes later, he returned home, and soon the guests began to arrive. There were the girls, Lauren's friends, and some new faces he hadn't seen before. They looked very polished, as Lauren's friends usually did, but Karen felt that the more people showed up, the less space he occupied in her life. They gathered in the living room, laughing, discussing fashion trends, and sharing thoughts on various brands, while Karen stayed on the sidelines. Lauren didn't seem to pay him much attention. "Karen, don't you want to join us?" Lauren asked when they sat down at the table. Her voice lacked the warmth he had hoped for. She spoke as if inviting a stranger. "I'm not hungry right now," he replied, though something was clearly bothering him. Lauren was no longer the warm and tender wife he had once loved. Her daily habits had changed. Her views and attitudes toward life seemed different. Later, when most of the guests had left, Karen noticed that Lauren acted much more freely with them than with him. She giggled with her friends, danced, and didn't even try to hide her detachment from him. Karen remained on the sidelines, tired and bewildered by how their relationship had changed. Lauren felt confident in the new atmosphere she was creating around herself. The evening was already halfway through when 3 men arrived at their house, men Karen had never seen before. Lauren, as if nothing unusual had happened, quickly opened the door and invited them inside. All 3 men looked very impressive, suits from top brands, expensive watches, and their demeanor spoke of high social status. They acted like real businessmen, and Karen immediately realized these weren't just any guests. "Hi, make yourselves at home," Lauren said with a wide smile and led them to the living room, where her friends were already gathered. Karen, still not understanding who these people were, felt out of place. He watched as Lauren actively introduced her friends to these men, not understanding why she was acting this way. She spoke about how successful they were, how they could help her with a new business, and how happy she was that they finally met her friends. "Who are these people?" Karen asked, trying to remain calm. He approached Lauren and took her hand, leading her to another room. "Where do you know them from, and why are they here?" Lauren, at first glance, seemed calm and casual, but there was a slight hint of impatience in her voice. "Calm down, Karen. They're just people I've started working with," she replied while adjusting her dress. "I've joined a business club, and these men are part of that world." They're going to help me start a business. And besides, I want my friends to meet respectable men. Karen was left confused. But didn't you say they already had husbands? And why is all this happening here, in our house? Why am I the one paying for it? Why did you invite them here? He asked anxiously, not understanding why Lauren was so eagerly dragging him into this new world. Lauren paid no attention to his concern. She responded again without even looking at him, "Let's not talk about that. Their husbands aren't as successful as these men. Money isn't an issue, don't worry about it. You're a man of a different status now. I want you to meet one of them. This is Peter, a big businessman. He's very successful and can help you become more influential. I know he can help you earn more." Karen felt a wave of anxiety rising within him. "You want me to work with him?" he asked, trying to understand why everything was happening so quickly and without any prior discussion. "But why does he have to be here? This all seems strange, Lauren." Lauren continued to smile, trying to reassure him. "Don't worry, everything will be fine. Let's just introduce you to Peter. He can help you understand how real businessmen operate." Lauren led Karen to Peter. He was tall, with a serious expression, and had an impressive appearance. His black suit and expensive watch emphasized his status. Peter greeted Karen with a firm handshake. "Hello, Karen. I've heard many good things about you," Peter said, looking at Karen with confident eyes. Lauren immediately started talking about how Peter was a true leader in his business, how he owned numerous companies, and how he could help Karen become more successful in business. "Karen, you have no idea how many opportunities Peter can offer you," Lauren said, stepping closer to Peter and embracing him as a sign of admiration. "He could be a fantastic partner for you." Karen couldn't hide his surprise. Peter looked very self-assured, and Lauren, it seemed, couldn't contain her admiration for him. Her embrace was so close and comfortable that Karen felt a growing sense of unease. He tried to smile and appear calm, but his heart was racing. "Are you and Peter very close?" Karen asked, trying to keep his emotions in check. "Why so familiar?" Lauren, without taking her eyes off Peter, replied, "We talk often at the business club, and he can really help you understand how this world works." Peter, noticing Karen's discomfort, added, "Lauren and I haven't known each other for long, but she's very promising. It's really important for her to find good partners for her business." Karen felt something was off. He watched as Lauren and Peter continued to exchange glances, and Lauren seemed like a completely different person. She was so focused on her new acquaintances that she didn't even notice how all of this was affecting him. "Lauren, what's going on?" Karen asked, trying to be careful with his words. "Why is everything moving so fast, and why have you changed so much?" Lauren simply smiled and replied, "I need to grow, Karen. You need to understand that I'm not the person you used to know. This is my new life, and I want you to be part of it. You need to grow and evolve too. We were at a low level, but now we have a chance to become elite. You need to understand that." "All right, we'll figure something out," Karen said. Karen went to the couch, wanting just to relax. He sat there, trying to stay calm, but he felt his nerves growing more tense. "Don't be so nervous, Karen. Everything will be fine," he recalled Lauren's words. But why were these men in his house? Why was she the one inviting them? And why did it seem like this was more than just a friendly meeting? His thoughts were interrupted by the voice of a woman approaching him. It was one of Lauren's friends, someone he hadn't spoken to before. She sat down next to him and started a conversation. "You must be making a lot of money, right? Lauren's told us so much about you. How you used to be such a loser, and now you're a real dream man. What's your secret?" she asked with a curious smile that immediately made Karen feel uneasy. "What?" He tried not to react too visibly, but he felt deeply uncomfortable inside. Did she really say I was a loser? The woman replied nonchalantly, "Well, yes. What's wrong with that? I'd love to get to know a man like you better." Karen couldn't help but feel upset. There was something strange about her words. Why was she so interested in his past, and why was she asking such questions? Most importantly, why couldn't he understand why Lauren was so close to all these people? He turned his head toward Lauren, who was spending more and more time with Peter. She was laughing, looking attractive and alluring, and in his eyes, it all seemed increasingly suspicious. Peter, the businessman, seemed so captivated by Lauren that Karen felt his heart sink. Lauren occasionally glanced at him with a smile he hadn't seen before, and he didn't like it at all. He overheard one of Lauren's friends asking, "How do you handle all this success? What did you do to become so successful?" It seemed like this woman was practically admiring his financial success. "Don't talk to me like that," Karen said quietly, a bit annoyed. "Are you hitting on me?" The woman quickly blushed and moved away, leaving Karen sitting there, observing the situation around him. And then, a new guest appeared at the door. It was Jason, a man with a serious demeanor whom Karen had never seen before. He had bodyguards who entered first, followed by Jason as he walked into the living room. Lauren immediately ran up to him, hugged him, and kissed him on the cheek, which looked a bit odd. Karen watched their interaction curiously, but his surprise grew when Lauren showed Jason the car keys, the very one she had received from Karen. "You said your husband gave this to you, right? Like, you said he's a millionaire, but this car, it's cheap for someone like him. He could have bought you a more expensive one," Jason said, looking at Lauren. "I agree with you, but I've always dreamed of this car, so it's fine," Lauren replied to him. Karen could no longer sit still. He found it hard to believe what was happening. Lauren, his wife, who had seemed so devoted to him, was now acting as if he was nothing more than a source of money. Why was she so close to all these men? This didn't look like typical business relationships. Lauren noticed Karen looking at her and Jason and paused for a moment. She quickly turned to him, with what seemed like feigned interest in her eyes. "Karen, why are you sitting there all alone? Come over and meet Jason. He's an important partner in my ventures. We're going to work together." Karen tried to keep his composure, but he was increasingly realizing that something was wrong. His wife was behaving like a different person. He felt her priorities had shifted, and she no longer treated him the way she used to. She clearly enjoyed being around these men, and he was starting to feel like a stranger to her. Karen sat in the kitchen, trying to calm himself, but his head was full of questions. This Jason, who had just entered, looked like a true business mogul, with bodyguards that seemed like his shadow. Karen couldn't understand why this man was at his party and why he appeared with all these strangers. Lauren acted as if it were completely normal, as if he was one of those people she had known for a long time. When Karen approached Jason to introduce himself, Jason immediately started talking about his many accomplishments. "I own several major companies, you know? If you need investment advice, I can help, but not for free, of course," Jason said with a self-satisfied grin. Karen pretended to be interested, though in truth, he just wanted to live his life as before and enjoy what he already had. He wasn't interested in learning about all these business schemes. But he nodded, feigning understanding. "But you should know, Karen, investments aren't just about money. It's your wife. Look at Lauren. She looks amazing tonight, dressed so well, and those legs, they're stunning. You're lucky to have a woman like her. You better listen to her, because if you don't, I'll take her from you," Jason said, laughing, his gaze lingering on Lauren. Karen felt a wave of tension rise within him. His heart skipped a beat as he heard those words. What does he mean? He thought. Is this a joke or something more? Thanks, Karen barely managed to say, trying not to look too suspicious. Jason kept laughing, but to Karen, it was far from funny. He couldn't figure out if it was just a joke, or if this man truly had intentions. Karen tried to step away from Jason, but the thoughts wouldn't leave him. Something felt wrong. Lauren, his wife, who had always seemed so loving and supportive, was now at the center of attention for all these men. They flirted with her, laughed, and touched her slightly. And she accepted it all with such ease, as if it were normal. This baffled Karen, but he didn't want to show his emotions in front of others. Eventually, Karen stayed in the kitchen, trying to calm himself. He poured himself another glass of wine, trying to push these thoughts away. But he couldn't help noticing that Lauren was now dancing with Jason. He watched as Jason held her by the waist, and as they moved together to the rhythm of the music. This wasn't just a dance. It was something else, something more romantic. Everyone else seemed relaxed and chatting, but Karen couldn't take his eyes off them. Was it really just a dance? Or were they more than just acquaintances? Lauren looked completely unbothered. She laughed and chatted with everyone, including Peter, who wasn't far behind Jason. Peter also approached her, smiling and discussing something with her, wearing the same intimate expression. And once again, Karen felt that cold sensation in his chest. It all looked strange. Somehow, he couldn't shake the feeling that his wife was giving more attention to these men than to him. She didn't stop at flirting with them, at seductive glances and playful gestures. Was she more interested in these men than in him? Karen tried to think logically. Maybe it was just his paranoia, but inside, nothing felt clear. She's still my wife, he thought. But for how long? Karen decided to set these thoughts aside for a while. He tried to relax, but each new situation, each interaction between Lauren and these men, only deepened his doubts. Should he stay with her? Or was he just not ready to face the reality that she was no longer the woman she had been at the start of their marriage? The next day after the party, Karen increasingly felt that something was wrong in his life. Lauren acted strange, too distant, and her words had become colder. She was no longer the woman he once knew. Instead of asking how he felt after meeting Jason and Peter, she just stayed silent. Her attention was glued to her phone, and when Karen tried to talk to her, she gave short, unhelpful answers that didn't explain why she had changed so much. "How are you?" Karen tried asking, sitting at the kitchen table and looking at her. "I'm fine," Lauren replied without lifting her eyes from her phone screen. It was surprisingly cold, and Karen couldn't help but feel that something was off. It wasn't just a change in her behavior. It was a certain distance she was creating between them. She was no longer as warm as before. Even when Karen tried to voice his suspicions, she brushed him off, as if it were all in his imagination. "You're probably just overthinking," Lauren said, placing her phone on the table and addressing him. "You know, Jackson and Peter are just friends, and hopefully, they'll become our business partners. There's no need to jump to conclusions." Karen was surprised by how calm she was. She didn't seem to realize that her words weren't convincing him. His suspicions only grew stronger. Something about her behavior seemed too unreal, even as she tried to make him dismiss his doubts. Karen felt like he was on the verge of uncovering something that could drastically change his life, but he still couldn't figure out what it was. The next day, Lauren went to a business meeting, leaving Karen at home. At times, he wandered around the house, reflecting on everything that had been happening lately. His heart raced as he recalled the dance between Lauren and Jackson. That moment when Jackson pulled her close and held her by the waist wouldn't leave his mind. That day, while Lauren was at her meeting, Karen began closely observing her behavior. He found a few odd things on her tablet, calls she had received late at night and messages that seemed very important to her. However, when he asked Lauren about these calls, she once again insisted they were just friends. She started manipulating the situation, making him believe it was all in his head. "Why are you attacking me like this?" Lauren said when Karen asked her about the late-night calls. "It's just my friends. You're overreacting." Karen felt more confident in his suspicions with each passing day, but Lauren became increasingly cunning in her manipulations. It was as if she was playing a game where she was nearly unbeatable. She grew more distant, avoided meaningful conversations, and when he tried to bring up important topics, she quickly changed the subject. "Maybe we need a little break from each other?" Lauren suggested one day, her gaze lacking its usual warmth. "I feel like you're focusing too much on our problems. Maybe it's better to just not think about it? We have so much money now. We should enjoy ourselves and live like we never have before. You just don't seem to understand that." This suggestion felt like a blow to Karen. He couldn't believe Lauren was even considering it. She was manipulating his emotions, making him doubt his own feelings and suspicions. She acted like it was all in his imagination, and he began to question whether his feelings were just jealousy or mistrust. But he couldn't shake the sense that something was wrong. Lauren had grown cold, even toward their beloved dog, Nancy, whom Karen often had to take to the neighbors for babysitting at Lauren's request. At the same time, Lauren became increasingly closed off and distant. She avoided any physical intimacy or even simple conversations. She was often late coming home from work meetings, and when Karen asked why, she would say she was held up by work. But each time, her responses grew more stubborn and detached. "I don't have time for these conversations, Karen," she said one day when he tried to ask why she had changed so much. "You don't understand, but I'm becoming a businesswoman, and I have my own problems to solve with my partners. It was a cold evening. Karen sat in the living room, sipping coffee and scrolling through the news on his phone when the door opened. Lauren walked in slowly, looking tense. Karen caught a whiff of perfume. It wasn't her usual scent, and it wasn't entirely feminine either. Instead of looking refreshed, as she usually did after a meeting, Lauren carried a strange, heavy, masculine fragrance. Karen couldn't help but notice it as she walked past him, leaving a faint trail of the scent in the air. She took off her shoes, and Karen noticed her face was slightly flushed, and her neck was marked with small dark spots. He was startled and couldn't help but look again. At first, he thought it might just be a result of her recent outfit or appearance, but when Lauren went to the bathroom to change, he noticed another similar mark on her arm. She was hiding it. Karen clenched his teeth, trying not to dwell on it, but something inside him began to stir. Clearly, this wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't normal. When Lauren came out of the bathroom and sat on the couch, she distracted him again by shifting the conversation. "How was your meeting?" Karen asked, trying to keep the question light, though his intuition told him the answer wouldn't be simple. "It was fine," Lauren replied without looking at him. Her voice carried a carelessness that was uncharacteristic for her. "Jackson is trying to organize everything perfectly. We even discussed some plans for the near future." Karen frowned slightly, trying to understand what she meant. He had disliked Jackson from the beginning, as the man was overly self-assured. Now, these scents and the marks on her body only deepened his suspicions. "So, what exactly is so important there?" Karen asked, trying not to sound too accusatory. "That's our business. You wouldn't understand anyway. It's about future plans, as always," Lauren replied, shrugging again. "By the way, Jackson and Peter invited us to go out of town to a big house. They want to spend a few days there discussing future investments and business plans. It's not just about business, it's for us too. We can relax a little. You should come with me." Karen sighed, his suspicions growing stronger. The perfume, the marks on her body, and this random invitation to go out of town. It all felt very suspicious. Of course, he wasn't thrilled about the idea of joining Jackson and Peter, but he couldn't leave her alone for such a long time. "How long will this be?" "Just a few hours," he asked, trying to stay calm. "And what about clothes?" Lauren looked at him, smiling. "I don't know, maybe a couple of days. There will be a lot of people there. I need to look good, and so do you. Don't forget to dress nicely. There will be women too. We need to make a good impression." Lauren was clearly trying to show him that it would be an ordinary event, but he still felt uneasy. Why couldn't they just leave things as they were? Why had this gathering suddenly become so important? "Why do we have to stay there for a few days?" Karen said, trying to hide his displeasure. "Why are you so interested in appearances all of a sudden?" Lauren shrugged again, as she always did when she didn't have a clear answer. "It's just part of the event. Everyone's trying to look good and have a good time. Trust me, it'll be fun." Karen tried to push his suspicions aside, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He looked at Lauren again, trying to determine if this was all just in his imagination. "All right, we'll go," he finally said, though he didn't feel at ease. "But I'll go with you, and I'll be watching what happens." "Perfect," Lauren replied, smiling, though her eyes were unreadable. She probably didn't even realize that her actions were fueling Karen's suspicions. He wasn't sure if he could handle observing them so closely, but he didn't have any other choice. The next day, Karen and Lauren went out of town, where everything looked too perfect, too luxurious. They arrived at a large estate where Jackson and Peter greeted them. Jackson was cheerful and welcoming, while Peter, as always, was serious and reserved. Everyone acted as if it were just an ordinary gathering, but Karen felt increasingly uncomfortable. Every glance Lauren gave Jackson lingered a little too long, every gesture a little too suggestive to be coincidental, and every move she made seemed to conceal what was becoming obvious. Their closeness was more than just a business relationship. When Karen and Lauren arrived at the party, the atmosphere was light and relaxed. The house Jackson had rented was impressive, plenty of guests, luxurious interiors, music, and lighting. Karen felt that everything here was entirely different from his normal life. He immediately noticed how stunning Lauren looked in her elegant dress, how the light from her wine glass sparkled in her eyes. She looked so beautiful, as if this entire setting was made just for her. Jackson was already on the patio with other businessmen, while Peter stood nearby. They were all laughing and drinking, but Karen, usually calm and composed, now felt growing unease. He noticed Lauren hurrying to Jackson, exchanging a few words and smiles with him. Then they walked to the bar together, and Karen was sure this wasn't just a business conversation. Karen sat on the couch, watching them, trying not to look too suspicious. He didn't want to seem jealous, but he couldn't ignore how easily Lauren held Jackson's hand, how he leaned closer to her, throwing glances that meant much more than casual interaction. They laughed, and Karen saw Lauren even smile flirtatiously at Jackson, which made his heart sink. He felt that this wasn't just a casual evening or business connections. Something in her behavior was raising doubts in him. Why was she acting like this when he was right there? There was no need for such closeness with Jackson, but Lauren was his wife, and maybe he was just overreacting. Maybe it was all in his head. But the longer he watched them, the stronger his feelings of distrust grew. He saw Lauren sitting on Jackson's lap when they all gathered on the plush couches for a conversation. Her hands rested on his shoulders, while Jackson seemed to hold her by the waist. Karen lost interest in the conversation and decided it was time to take a walk outside to catch his breath. Outside, he lit a cigarette and tried to calm his thoughts. He couldn't understand why Lauren had become so distant lately. She was no longer the woman he used to know. She was changing, and he didn't understand why. It became even more obvious tonight when he saw her behavior with Jackson. Peter approached him and noticed that Karen looked exhausted. "Are you all right?" Peter asked. Karen smiled, though he wasn't sure if it was a genuine gesture. "Yeah, just a little tired. I just feel a bit out of place here." "I see," Peter replied, not realizing what was going through Karen's mind. "But you know, Jackson isn't just a big businessman. He has his own ideas about how to do things, and he's a bit unconventional." Peter couldn't hide his dissatisfaction with how much time Lauren was spending with Jackson. He asked Karen, "What do you mean?" Peter looked around, as if making sure no one else could hear them. "Just be careful. I know you and Lauren have been together for a long time, but Jackson is always looking for opportunities. He's not the kind of person to let someone into his circle for no reason. Understand, he might be interested in more than just business." Karen felt his heart skip a beat. "Are you saying there's something more between them?" Peter took a deep breath but didn't answer directly. He realized this wasn't a question for him to answer, so he simply changed the subject. "I'm just saying, not everything is as it seems. That's all." Karen returned to the room, unsure of what to do with all these thoughts. He couldn't just stand by and watch anymore. Lauren was nearly outside, holding Jackson's hand. They were laughing and talking about something lighthearted. Karen walked up to her. "How's everything going?" "I was starting to get worried about you too," he asked, trying to sound casual. Lauren quickly glanced at him, and a slight change in her expression flashed across her face. "Don't worry, Karen. We're just talking. Jackson is a great partner." Karen tried to remain calm. "I understand, but it seems like you're spending more time with him than with me." Lauren paused for a moment, as if remembering something. "Don't overthink it. It's just work, you know." But Karen felt there was something between them that couldn't be explained with words. He watched as Jackson laughed, hugged Lauren, and her gaze met his with the same energy. All these small signals pointed to something more than just a professional friendship. When they got back home, Karen felt like he needed to talk to Lauren. Something was bothering him. He couldn't just sit by and not find out the truth. What if he was wrong? What if it was just his imagination? But the feeling of unease wouldn't leave his mind. Feeling overwhelmed by the tension, Karen decided he needed to leave that place. He turned to Lauren. "I can't take this anymore. Spending days here. Can I go home?" Lauren looked at him with surprise but realized that perhaps this was for the best. "Fine, go. I'll handle things with Jackson and Peter in the meantime. Maybe this is better for all of us." Karen grabbed his bag and left. The entire way home, he tried to calm himself, but he couldn't stop thinking about the possibility that Lauren might be with Jackson, and it mattered greatly. However, he had no proof, which made it even more frustrating. He knew he needed to find out the truth for himself. When he got home, his first thought was to look for clues. He didn't want to do it, but he couldn't resist. Jealousy was pushing him to it. He started searching Lauren's room, going through her bags and personal belongings. It was a risk, but deep down, he felt this was the only way to ease his mind. The first thing he found shocked him: condoms in her new bag. Why were they there? It seemed strange. Why would Lauren carry those with her when everything between them seemed fine? Karen kept searching through her new things, and then, in the closet, he spotted her old bag peeking out from under some clothes. He pulled it out and started looking through it. Karen found some photographs and grabbed one. It was a picture of Peter and Lauren, kissing while sitting on a bed. The photo had been taken 3 weeks ago. Karen asked himself what it could mean. They looked like a couple, close, as if nothing forbidden stood between them. Next, he went for her tablet, the one she used for work, and found another shocking discovery. In her social media accounts, there was another profile he didn't know about. He opened it. There, he found messages from Peter. Karen's heart sank when he saw that they weren't just communicating as colleagues, but with a certain emotional connection. He read one of the messages where Peter wrote, "I want you back. I don't want to see you with Jackson or Karen. You deserve more." Karen felt something break inside him. He had no idea things had gone this far. He thought, what does he mean by, "I don't want to see you with Jackson or Karen"? This isn't normal. Peter knew about what was happening between Lauren and Jackson. So, they've been deceiving me, and I never suspected a thing. Karen continued reading the messages. It was a shocking revelation. Peter wasn't just sending her professional messages. It turned out he was trying to win her back. He wrote, "You deserve happiness. Don't choose Jackson. Don't choose Karen. I know we were together, and this isn't just a forgotten past. I'm willing to do anything to be with you." Karen felt the situation becoming even more complicated. It was hard to believe that all of this was happening right in front of him. Peter wasn't just a friend. He was a rival, and Lauren was choosing him along with Jackson. But it didn't end there. In the same account, Karen found messages with Jackson too, photos of Lauren and Jackson together, along with romantic messages. This was the final blow for him. Lauren wasn't just cheating with one man. She was deceiving him with two. His mind was overwhelmed with feelings of betrayal and pain, but at the same time, an intense anger stirred within him. He couldn't simply confront her about it. There was no point in just discussing it with her. No, he decided she had to face the consequences. If she thought he wouldn't notice, she was wrong. He needed to do something drastic, something she would never forget. Karen knew exactly who Jackson and Peter were. Both were men who cared only about status and money. Lauren was the perfect trophy for them. She was attractive, dressed well, and of course, relied on Karen financially. All her expenses, from stylish branded items to expensive jewelry, were covered entirely by his money. Her new car, her apartment, it all belonged to him, though she didn't fully realize it. To Karen, this wasn't just betrayal. It was outright manipulation. And while he had all the evidence, he decided not to reveal it right away. Instead, he devised a plan that would allow him to savor his revenge to the fullest. When Lauren returned home, he told her directly. "Lauren, tomorrow there's going to be an amazing event," Karen said, trying to appear calm, even though his heart was pounding. "I rented a movie theater, and we'll watch a new film together. You, me, our friends, and also Jackson and Peter. It'll be a great opportunity for all of us to spend some time together." Lauren, suspecting nothing, agreed, not realizing what he was planning. She didn't even think about why Karen had suddenly taken an interest in this event. For her, it was just another chance to spend time with friends, nothing more. The next day, everyone gathered at the theater. Everyone was friendly, and the atmosphere was surprisingly light. Lauren smiled, sitting next to Karen, while Jackson and Peter sat not far away, trying not to draw too much attention to themselves. But each of them, even if subconsciously, felt a sense of unease. Something was off. After a few minutes, once everyone got comfortable, the opening scene appeared on the screen. A typical movie scene. The plot unfolded around betrayal, and everyone watched with interest. Lauren couldn't help but notice how her body began to react to these scenes. Her expression changed, her eyes grew more alert. She tried to remain calm, but it was clear this was not what she had expected to see on the big screen. And then, At the most gripping moment of the film, when the audience was fully engrossed, a new scene appeared that left everyone speechless. Another version of the film started playing, a version Karen had prepared. The screen showed photos and videos from Karen's personal archive. Lauren and Peter kissing in bed, spending time together in expensive restaurants and hotels. Then the screen displayed Lauren's messages with Peter and Jackson. At first, it was difficult even for those who knew Karen well to process what they were seeing. Everyone sat transfixed, shocked by what was unfolding before them. Lauren felt her heart racing. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. All her lies were exposed on the screen in front of all her friends and close acquaintances. She tried to stay composed, but her hands trembled and her knees began to weaken. She realized there was no way out now. When the film ended, Karen stepped onto the stage in front of everyone. He stood there, calmly looking at Lauren and at everyone present. The room was silent, as if everyone was waiting for his next words. "Lauren," he began, his voice calm, though inside he was raging. "Did you think you could deceive me and just go on living as if nothing happened? I've blocked your access to my bank accounts. You no longer have access to the money you've been relying on. Furthermore, I'm filing for divorce. My lawyers are already preparing all the paperwork. You won't get anything, not even the car I gave you." Lauren stood there, watching as her world crumbled before her eyes. Her tears began to flow, but it didn't help. She started begging Karen, trying to find even a shred of sympathy in his eyes. "Please, Karen, don't leave me. I'll fix everything. I'll change everything." But Karen was unyielding. His mind had already made its decision, and now he had no doubts. All the evidence was on his side. "You won't change, Lauren, and you can't fix what you've destroyed. All these games with Peter and Jackson, they're no longer for me. My tolerance is gone." Peter and Jackson sat there, visibly uncomfortable. They realized they had lost all respect for Lauren and could no longer even look at her. They stood up silently and left the room without looking back. Their presence no longer mattered. Lauren was left alone before the crowd, broken and hopeless. All her manipulations, betrayal, and ambitions were now laid bare for everyone to see. She no longer had any power, and all her attempts to salvage even a shred of her reputation were futile. Did you enjoy Karen's revenge for her betrayal? Let us know in the comments.